Romantic. The French town of Quesnoy. Characterized by its fortress-like structure, the population was occupied by German forces from the very start of the Great War in 1914. At the same time, Leslie Averill and Paul Clark attended Christ College here in Ōtautahi. 17 years old and in their final year of high school, despite the war reaching even the bottom of the world here in Aotearoa, these young men could not imagine what the next 4 years would have in store for them. Both then went on to Auckland University College to study medicine. Paul had even been awarded the Maria Blackett Scholarship at St John's Theological College in 1915. He was studying to become a doctor. We know from the John Kenda Theological Library that there is correspondence from Paul to the St John's College Trust Board, asking them to hold his scholarship until he returned from the war. Clark could not afford to continue his studies in medicine, even with the scholarship. He writes that after the war he should have obtained both experience and funds to further his studies. Averill joined him despite his parents' objections, and after training, both Clark and Averill were commissioned.
We tend to think of the First World War as half a decade of unmitigated horror that was utterly pointless and wasteful. Now, all war is waste. There's no question about that.
Gallipoli was a learning curve for us, but the true cost of the war we paid on the Western Front.
The Western Front in 1918 speaks to the brutality and the carnage of the First World War. Paul Clark was killed in action, fighting near Bapaume, France, on the 26th of August 1918. He was 21 years old. During this battle, Leslie Averill was awarded the Military Cross for exceptional gallantry and fine leadership. 3 months remain in the war. Averill carries on with the Rifle Brigade. He is 21.
Villages are not objectives, they're obstacles, and they should be bypassed, because all they will do is cost the lives of his men.
The road to victory was paved with mud, smoke, and mist, and this is what the troops awoke to at 0 hour, 5:30 a.m.
I think if I'd been there, if I'd been a German soldier, I would have said, time's up.
The forces could not bombard Quesnoy. There were French civilians sheltering inside of the walls. To use such force was to destroy the very people that they had come to liberate and the rich history of the town. Many of the German soldiers were exhausted, they were demoralized. Many of them knew or hoped that the war was almost over.
And suddenly they are on the defensive and they are going backwards and they are not being reinforced.
The garrison of that village has no choice but to surrender. And that's how he was going to approach Quesnoy.
But their officers refused to surrender, not without a fight. Scouts are sent to find a way in. Leslie Averill is among them. They continue to investigate the defences. The walls are 18 metres high, solid brick and stone. There is no way in through the gates, nowhere in through the walls, no way in except for over. They need ladders. The Māori battalion and the engineers go out and gather them. But the ladders are too short. The inner fortifications, the final wall, cannot be reached from the moats. There is a narrow stone bridge on the other side. They must bounce on that tiny bridge in the mist and the smoke and raise the ladder against the final wall. It is now approximately 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Major Harold Barrowclough, 29 years old, selects a small group of men, Second Lieutenant H.W. Kerr, 3 riflemen and Leslie Averill. with 30 centimetres to spare, resting against a grassy bank that hides the top of the ladder from the view inside of the town. Avril starts to climb. With him, he carries a revolver.
A revolver is a very short range and largely ineffectual weapon. They knew full well the effective weapon, but very likely because he had to climb up the ladder.
Reaching the top, he steps over the coping onto the grassy bank. He crouches and looks over at 2 German soldiers at a guard post. He fires, forcing them to take cover. The rest of the battalion swarms up the ladder behind them. Barraclough himself comes. Even now, the German forces failed to relent, attempting to order a counter-attack. But the Kiwis swarmed the town at such a speed that they at last surrendered. Over 700 prisoners taken inside Lacanois alone. Avril writes later in his report of the event that the delight of the people of Lacanois on being free again knew no bounds, that their liberators had come from the other side of the world, helped them in their hour of need, impressed them very greatly, and this battle was a sacrifice that would never be forgotten.
It was the whole division was moving with such speed and professionalism.
Leslie Avril came back after he finished his studies in medicine at the University of Edinburgh, gaining a scholarship in October of 1919. He became a doctor and then a pillar of the Christchurch medical community, living until 1981. On the 27th of April 1919, Leslie Avril's father, Alfred Avril, dedicated to the memory of Paul G. Clarke his name on an oak front cover at St. Aidan's Church in Auckland.
And it's a continual cycle. Reinforcements coming in, wounded, returned to New Zealand, 28,000, because we sent over 100,000 men to war. And by the end of the war, we've had 60,000 casualties, 6 in every 10.
The capture of Lacanois and the subsequent liberation of the citizens invokes a kind of mythological sense. The New Zealanders, in scaling the high ramparts of the fortress, which were considered unscalable, reached the final turning point of the war and achieved the pinnacle of their wonderful record.
At a time when no New Zealanders could get there, they remembered. We owe it to them to remember.